Dear Lord and Father of mankind, forgive our foolish ways. Reclothe us in our rightful mind, in pure lives thy service find, in deeper reverence, praise. Breathe through the heats of our desire thy coolness and thy balm. Let sense be dumb, let flesh retire. Speak through the earthquake, wind, and fire, O still, small voice of calm. Amen.
Amen.
Well, there comes a time for all of us, really more than once, when we're really in desperate need of a word from God. Maybe we're dejected, despondent, sick, emotionally exhausted. Maybe we're facing decisions or situations that just seem too complex and too convoluted for us to deal with. We are just desperate in those moments for some message from God. We've all known such moments, and we all know that we're going to know such moments again. Moments in which we're desperate to receive some kind of message, some kind of vision, some kind of word of hope. We're often led to believe, tempted actually, that such a word, such a vision, such a message, to be valid, genuine, authentic, needs to be something absolutely momentous, grandiose, powerful beyond words. And we're tempted to believe that if such words, such visions, such messages don't come to us, then there's something wrong with our faith. We're told that from time to time by folks out there. Back in 1980, the televangelist Oral Roberts, who had built a university in Tulsa, desperately wanted to add a medical school to his university. And he came before his followers one day and informed them that the previous week he had been confronted with a 900-foot tall Jesus. 900-foot tall Jesus. Now that's a vision worthy of our attention. Jesus in the vision, in the encounter, told Oral Roberts that if his supporters didn't provide money adequate to fund a medical school, he was going to die within the year. Historical footnote. Oral Roberts got the millions. He lived on for a while. The medical school was built and was an abject failure. Closed within a matter of just a few years. Well, if you're like me, and if your spiritual life is maybe more attuned to mine than that, you probably haven't confronted a 900-foot tall Jesus in the last little bit. If you have, see me after the service and we'll start the counseling. I would turn to an even more powerful vision, word from God that occurred, as a matter of fact, around about the same time Oral Roberts encountered a 900-foot tall Jesus. One of my favorite authors was Reynolds Price. He was a very prolific author. You probably haven't heard of him. He's one of what we call those Southern writers. He taught for years at Duke University, taught creative writing. The only novel of his that you might have heard of is entitled Kate Vaden. Reynolds Price died in 2011, I believe it was. But back in the early 80s, again, around about the same time Oral Roberts had his vision, Reynolds Price was diagnosed with a virulent form of cancer of the spine, that was growing voraciously inside his body, not only rendering him paralyzed and in a wheelchair for the rest of his life, but also rendering him in abject, unspeakable, agonizing pain. And as he fought that pain, really a miracle occurred in that he got in touch with what he referred to as a whole new life. A whole new life. And he wrote a memoir, an account of his passage through that illness and that pain and the psychological and spiritual agony that went with it. And he entitled that book, A Whole New Life. And in the book, he describes the central crystalline moment when he found the strength to carry on. And here's the way he described it. He says, "It was an uncanny experience. It came as a sound, one syllable. In that black trough, I remember looking up to the ceiling and addressing what I must have thought was God, the last unchangeable bafflement. How much more do I take? How much more do I take?" Desperation. At the end. Reynolds continued, "A long silent pause, then a voice at normal speaking strength said the one word, more. More. Neither male nor female, nor repellently neuter, but thoroughly real and near at hand. More then. No release yet." So the next morning after that experience, Reynolds Price called a Methodist pastor over to his house so he could have communion as he processed what he had experienced. And here's what he said of that morning. "Perhaps as intensely as any mystic, in the slow eating that morning, I experienced again the almost overwhelming force that has always felt to me like God's presence. Whether the force would confirm my healing or go on devastating me, for the moment I barely cared. No prior taste in my old life has meant as much as this new chance at a washed and clarified view of my fate. In many calmer hours to come, I'd know that my answer to that one word, more, was 3 words. Bring it on. Bring it on." Reynolds Price had a powerful, life-changing, life-saving vision of God. Not 900 feet tall, even more powerful than that. And you know, Reynolds Price is by no means the only person of the literary arts who's had a quiet experience like that has transformed his or her life. I think also of John Greenleaf Whittier. You just sang a poem of his, "Dear Lord and Father of Mankind." John Greenleaf Whittier. He lived back in the earlier part of the 1800s. I forget exactly when he was born, but he was active in literary circles and being fantastically successful in the 30s and 40s, 1830s, 1840s. In fact, my grandmother left me a book that had been on her shelf all the years I had known her when she died, a first edition of John Greenleaf Whittier's poetry. And when I inherited it from her, it didn't mean much because this was just some old guy from way back when, and it seemed pretty irrelevant. But after that, I've grown up a bit, and I've gotten to know a little bit about John Greenleaf Whittier. He was fantastically successful as a published author in the United States, and he gave it all up. He became very sick, housebound, and literally almost bedridden in the 1840s. And he voluntarily gave up his literary career because he felt like God had said to him in the midst of his illness as it pounced on him, "Help free my people. Help free my people." And he dedicated the rest of his life from the interior of his house and more often from his bed, he dedicated himself to become a leading abolitionist in the United States. John Greenleaf Whittier. Breathe through the heats of our desire, thy coolness and thy balm. Let sense be dumb, let flesh retire. Speak through the earthquake, wind and fire. O still small voice of calm. Life-changing, life-saving, quiet little moments. Reynolds Price and John Greenleaf Whittier had a biblical precedent for their experiences, didn't they? Such experiences are in the Bible, and they're specifically in the 19th chapter of the first book of Kings, when we gather with the prophet Elijah out in the wilderness. Elijah is a hunted man, a wanted man. He has been tilting, standing up for the faith against evil King Ahab and evil Queen Jezebel. And he's just about at the end of his rope. In fact, I don't know if you noticed it in the passage that Mark read for us this morning, but Elijah asked God to take his life. He's just absolutely at the bitter end. He can't go on anymore. He's in a cave out in the wilderness, and he has some experiences out there. Again, not a 900-foot tall Jesus, but a mighty wind so powerful that it split rocks in two, which is a pretty powerful wind. But God wasn't in the wind. There was an earthquake. That was not about God. There was a raging fire. God wasn't in the fire. Powerful, stupendous experiences that you could write a book about, but that somehow weren't authentically of the Spirit and didn't touch Elijah. And then Elijah received something else. In our translation of the Bible, a sound of sheer silence. A still, small voice. And upon hearing that, whatever he heard, if he heard anything in a literal fashion, Emmanuel rose up from his cot on the ground, threw his mantle around him. He was ready to face life again. He was ready to face Ahab and Jezebel again. He was ready to live and not die. The situation that surrounded him, the threat, the fear, the persecution, hadn't changed one iota. He had been totally transformed inside by a still, small voice. That still small voice was the voice of God's presence with Elijah in his travail. In the soft and gentle urging of a still small voice, he found the strength he needed to carry on. The still small voice is speaking to us right now. God is with us. We don't have to hang our heads in shame that our spiritual life is not comparable. I've seen a 900-foot tall Jesus. We have all we need and more. Breathe through the heats of our desire thy coolness and thy balm. Let sense be dumb. Let flesh retire. Speak through the earthquake, wind and fire. O still, small voice of calm.